Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is to download the IDEs that we're going to be using to code. So what you need to do is come here, visualstudio.microsoft.com and then /downloads. So here you're going to see the various available IDEs. First, you see the Visual Studio 2019, and then second, you see the Visual Studio Code. So the Visual Studio 2019 itself has several versions. You have the community versions, professional, and the enterprise. The community version is free, and that might be your choice. That's what you're going to be downloading. So you could also try professional or the enterprise. But if you use professional or enterprise, you can see it's a free trial offer, and it's going to get expired after a period of time. But it's worth exploring if you want to give it a shot. Like you want to use it within a professional or enterprise environment, and you want to use licensed software. Why not? It's good. But community edition is equally powerful, and you're going to be as a starter. This is what you're going to be downloading. Powerful IDEs, free for students, open source, contributors, and individuals. So you use that. So go ahead and download this. That's a choice. Go ahead and download the free download Visual Studio. You may also want to use Visual Studio Code. A lot of people are using Visual Studio Code to develop for .NET and C# these days. But why you want to choose Visual Studio over VS Code is because Visual Studio is a complete IDE, complete IDE with a debugger, everything and suit. That's what you get with the Visual Studio. Well, Visual Studio Code, you can also pimp it up. You can install extensions to make it to that level of Visual Studio, but still it can match it in terms of what you're developing. But Visual Studio Code will be your pick if you do a lot of front-end development, and it's pretty fast compared to Visual Studio, because Visual Studio is a whole lot. So if you're already using Visual Studio Code and you're used to that and you don't have much resources, you may stick to it. You can use it to develop. But then if you have your resources on your laptops and you want to develop real-time .NET and C# application, I would recommend you using Visual Studio. So anyway, in this session, what we're using this tutorial is Visual Studio. And at the record of this session, what we are the stable version is 2019. There's a 2022 preview, but that's still a preview, as you can see. All right, so go ahead and download this, or you can download this. And if you are following along with a MacBook, you can also download this Visual Studio for Mac, like that. So when you're done downloading, you join me in writing our first C# program. So once you're done downloading, you go ahead and open it. Once you open your Visual Studio application, this is what you see. This is what you get to see, right? So here, on the left hand side, you're going to see, recent applications that you've worked on. That is if you have been working with Visual Studio in the past. But if this is your first, this is the first time you're opening the Visual Studio, then this is going to be empty. You can see these are recent applications I worked on. Then now let's shift focus to the right hand side. So getting started. So there are various ways you can start your application on Visual Studio. Maybe you have a repository, let's say a GitHub repository or any other repository like that. So you want to clone, let's say you have a code that you want to just start working on. So you can clone a repository and start from there. You can open a project, a solution right on your system that you have worked on before, and then you can open a local folder. Like you just want to create a new folder and then you want to do something with it. So but this last one here is what we're going to be using, which is create a new project, because this is our first C# program that we are writing. So go ahead and click on create a new project. Now this is going to load, and it's loading the various project type and templates first. So once it's done loading it, we're going to see what we've got. Now it's done. Now on the left hand side, you're going to see the recent project template that you used. In my own case, I've been using ASP.NET Core Web App recently. So if you haven't used any recently, still this is going to be empty like it was previously. And then here, this is where you get to choose the type of application you want to write. Now, so you have your, console application, you have console applications, this and these are pretty much the same. The only difference is why this use C#, this one uses Visual Basic, right? So this is ASP.NET Core Web App, Razor Pages, and all of that. So for the start, what we are trying to do is to introduce ourselves to C# first. So go ahead and click on this console application with C#. That's our starting point. So click on it, and then go ahead and click on next here. Okay, so once you click on next, then you would see you're going to provide a project name for your application, right? You provide a project name for your application. So for here, I'm going to say, let me say I have Tunga C# intro, C# intro. All right, so automatically the project names is suggested to be your solution name as well. So later on, you get to understand the difference between a solution and a project. Both a solution may contain multiple projects. Project is just a bit within a solution, and it's possible that you have only one single project within a solution, right? So most of the times you find yourself giving, you have a project name and then the same name as the solution name. But as time moves on, so you may have multiple other, you may be adding more projects to the solution, right? So but at the start, we have the project name, Tunga C# intro, and I will maintain solution name to be like that as well. And this is the location where your project will be saved. A folder will be created within this directory, and then that is why. So you have the liberty to choosing where you want to put it. Okay, you have the liberty to choosing where you want to put it. So you can do that like that. So place solution and project in the same directory. So you want to do that, like solution and project will be within the same enclosed folder. So I'm going to leave it empty as it is, and then we're going to explore more later on. So after supplying the project name, which in this case I put Tunga C# intro, so I will just go ahead and say next. Now the next thing is to choose the target framework that you're going to be using. So here you are going to we are using .NET 5.0. that's what I want, that's what we're going to be using. So if you don't have .NET 5.0, just simply go and download the .NET. Okay, go and download .NET Framework 5.0, right? Or you can just go ahead and update your Visual Studio. Just go ahead and update your Visual Studio. So if you update your Visual Studio, you should have the latest .NET. Okay, so or otherwise you can just go straight to download the .NET this thing. But of course, right now we are not doing so much about the .NET itself. So it's C# we are focusing on. So it means less. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and create this. So as we create this, so the project is getting created. So you can see creating project, and wow, it's going to open. So there you go, it's opened up, and then we can see that for some of us, we are seeing this interface for the first time. So you're seeing this interface for the first time, and so let me just explain what we have right here. Let me just explain what we have. So we have some boilerplate code here that we never wrote. We've not written it, so we made it here, and it's going to make life easy for us. And then on the right hand side, we have our folder structure. That's our solution explorer here. So this is where all our codes will reside in. And then if you have a close look, you'll see what you have here. You have a solution, and the solution name is Tunga C# intro. and then there are one project. There's only one project within the solution right now, and the project name is called Tunga C# Intro as well. So when you were creating the project the other time, you named it Tunga C# Intro, and that is why you're seeing it here. So but then there's a mysterious two folder here. The first one is the dependencies, and the second one is the program. So dependency is what your program depends on. This is what makes it work the way it works. So this is the libraries that make the .NET works the way it works. So the advantage, that's what you're so you can see within dependencies you have the analyzers, which pretty much analyzes and your programs, and then you have the framework itself, which is here, Microsoft.NET Core App. But of course, like I said, we are not focusing on the .NET itself right now. The focus right now is to get our hands strong on C# first before we move into the .NET core. Now, so beyond the dependencies, which is what your application depends on and taking advantage of, the second thing you get to see is the program. The program is pretty much the gateway, that's the principal of your project. This is where your project gets run. This is your project. So in your project, you would likely have multiple files, multiple folders and all of those, but all of them would have to compile through a single gate, and that single gate for now is your program. So that was created for you, and that is the content of it is what you are seeing right here, and that's the file that is open right here. You can see program.c#. So C# files, just like HTML files, extension is .cs, which is C#. If you're writing an HTML files, you say .html. If it's JavaScript.js, if it's java.java. So here is .ch. So this is a program class. You can see it's a program folder, and then what it contains is essentially a program class. Now let me explain what we've got here. The first thing is this one here. The first thing you get to see here is using system. Okay, so in C#, you're going to be taking advantage of, and of course that's why you're using it as a framework within the .NET framework. Okay, so you are taking advantage of something that has been written, so that when you need them, you don't have to write them again. So you just take advantage of them. So, but you need a powerful word to use them. So that is called the using keyword. The using keyword is a keyword for importing what you need. A keyword for importing what you need. So if you need anything, you just say give me. But it's not going to give you. You say give me. So what you use is using. You say using. Then you say using this, using that. So by that, and it brings that to your systems, and you can make use of it. Okay, so in this case, what you are having here is using system. So the system here, if you control, you can see here, if you mouse over it, you can see is the namespace. I'm going to explain just down here what a namespace is. So here, the system has a lot. So that's a system. That's the whole thing now, right? So within it, it has a lot. If you put a dot, so you're going to see several stuff that are contained within the system that are importable. So you can see the buffers, the code, DOM, collections, a whole lot. The link, formats, dynamics, numerics, reflections. Most of these things we'll talk about as we move along. All right. So just know that using keyword is that powerful keyword that you use to bring into your system whatever you need. So if if you have been using any other program like Java before, or some JavaScript, these things, this is equivalent to import. You say import keyword in some other language. All right, but here what we use is using, to bring in whatever it is we need. All right, so and then if you go along, you also are going to be writing some codes that are importable into other modules. You have modularized your codes, and then you want to you bring in a part of your code into other, so that it can be reused. So you are going to also be using keyword like that. So that is that about this. And then the next thing you get to see here is the namespace in Tunga C# intro. So namespace is pretty much what you can, the simplest explanation of a namespace that you can get is it's pretty much like a module. It's pretty much like a module, like you modularize your code, like that. So it's in a module, like a package. Okay, so this module can contain submodules, may contain submodules, and then pieces like classes, object, and all of that. Okay, that is what a namespace is. So by default, a default namespace is created for you, and that matches the name of your project. And of course, so you can see here we have Tunga C# into, that was the name of the project that we supplied. And then when the code is scaffolded, you have this namespace here, but I may not retain it. I could call it anything, because of course my project is going to be having multiple namespaces. As we go along, you see that your project will have more. So it's just like a way of modularizing your project, breaking them into packages. This is called package in Java, if you are used to Java. So modules in some other JavaScript language. Okay, so that is basically what a namespace is. A namespace is pretty much like a container that is able to contain other namespaces, classes, objects, and all of that. Pretty much a module. Okay, so here within it, so in this case we have this giving a default name of the project, so I can change it. I can change it to anything. It could be anything anyway, so it doesn't have to be, it could be anything. All right, so this can be anything. It doesn't have to be whatever it was given to me, so I can have it like that, anything. Okay, anything tells you that it can be anything. You can type anything there. Okay, so here you have within that you have a default class, which is program. As we move along, there's an elaborate sessions where we talk about class as a whole. And so, but now that class is a way of grouping a piece of code, is a way of grouping a piece of code, and you use a class keyword to creating it. And then so you have a class keyword, and then this is the name of the class, and this can be anything as well. So this can also be any name as well. It doesn't really have to match the name of the file. The name of the file here is program.c#. This can also be any name. It doesn't have to be a program. But I'm going to take it back to what it was, so we follow along simply. Okay, so within that class, which is name program, within it we have a default name called main. This main is called a method. So like I said, class is a way of grouping piece of codes, just like in your schools. There's, we say, class of class of programmers, class of you in your school you have like level 1, level 2, level 3. So everyone within level 1s are grouped together pretty much like a class. The same way in programming too, that's what we do. All right, so within this class here we have a method. So this method here is a default method. This is where your program get to run through, right? So, and more method as we move along, right? So this is just to explain a bit of what we met on ground. So as we move along, we'll explain a method in total. So this is your default method. Yeah, this is through which, like the gate through which all your programs run through. It's called the main method, right? So, and this is string of arguments. Those argument which is of type array of string, which could come through the main, which is pretty much means like a parameter. So more of this as we move along. Okay, so the next thing you get to see there is the console.writeline. So because this is a console application, so our output is not going to be on the web. So our output is going to be within the console. And how we get to write stuff to the console is using a Writeline. So if you write use something like this, this is going to print hello world to the console, right? So hello world to the console. So Writeline hello world, so whatever it is you put here is going to be be the output within the it's going to be written to the console. So now that's a bit of what we met on ground. And then here you see the Visual Studio interface. So we're going to be introducing ourselves to it one after the other as we move along, so I don't want to bore us too much, but then you can explore the Visual Studio. Like you can go through help and read more about the Visual Studio, which would give you an overview of using the C Sharp, the Visual Studio IDE. It's pretty powerful. It's pretty powerful. Now let's run this code and let's see how it runs. So to run this code, so I will just simply goes to, you have the debug. I'll go to debug. So I will say start without debugging, or you can just build it. Okay. So let's say you build. So it's built. You can see build, 1 succeeded, 0 failed. Now, so at this point, if you build and you have an error, then you're going to have to read through the error, and then, so if you have an error, you can see the error list here. It shows you what the error list is. So, but you don't have an error, so you can see the outputs. Everything works pretty fine. Now, if I go to debug and I say start without debugging, so you can see that it runs on my console. So this is a console. This is what we call console. That is your command line, like command prompt. So you have hello world. You can see that what's it called? You can see hello world printed here. You can see hello world printed here. So if you go ahead to your code and write something else, console.writeline, I'm writing log. So console.writeline, you can write something else, C Sharp, or I am a C Sharp developer. I'm a C Sharp developer. So have it like this, have it saved, and then you see your, you can run that. So you can see hello world. You see I'm a C Sharp developer. You can see, like that. So whatever it is you write there, get routines to the console, right? So that is what you have there as the programs of C Sharp, and then you have this. Okay. Now, so the next thing we're going to do is this. We've introduced ourselves to a bit of what we met on ground. So let's put our bits in it. So the first thing is comment here. Comments in C Sharp. Comment. So comment works like pretty much like you have it in other languages as well. So you have the single line comment, and then you have the multi-line comment. So the single line comment is this. This is a single line comment. So comment, of course, are not executables. They are there to provide explanations within our codes and make our codes a bit more readable, or just provide an int, whatever it is within your code, like that. So that is a single line comment, and the multiple line comments remain your this. All right, so you have your, this is your multi-line comments, so you can have it like that, and then you can also have it as a doc block, right? So now this is a multi-line comment. This is a multi-line comment. Multi-line comment. Okay, this is how we write multiple line comments within our what's it called, in your C Sharp. So it doesn't have to, we don't have to declare it that way. So we have something like this. This is the comment, single line comment, and the multi-line comments. The next thing is I'm going to talk about his statement. Statement, like how do you write a single statement in C Sharp. So it's pretty much, if you've written any other language, any other programming language, it's the same. For instance, in English language, I said a developer. If I do this, I'm a developer. This is an English statement, and then of course for it to be correct, you need to put a dot, right? So in C Sharp too, for when you write a statement, so let me say I'm having something like this. If you have a statement, so your statement is not complete until you terminate it, right? So when you terminate a statement, you terminate it with a semicolon. A semicolon, for instance. So let me say I have a variable statement, something like this, variable statements like that. Though I didn't assign this because it's an, so I have the variable statement equals to I'm a developer, or hello world, or something like this. This is a statement. This is a complete statement as far as C# is concerned. You have an expression, okay, an expression, and then you terminate it with your semicolon. This is correct. And then this one now, so instead of having to I can then use this one here. Let's say I use this statement right here. So I use this statement right here as this variable, and you will notice that when I wrote it initially, it's underlined it green, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. Now, but what we're talking about now is how you write a single statement and a correct single statement. So this is like this. So if you run this, you will see that there's no difference. There's no difference in that. Okay. So if you run that, so you can see you still got your hello world and I'm a C# developer, right? So this is how we write a single statement. So the next thing we're going to have to talk about is variables. So I just want us to have everything together here. Now, what is a variable? Variable are pretty much like a container, a container that's where you can save stuff. Pretty much a container where you save stuff. So this is like a memory location. It's a memory location within your resources, like within your PC, within your computer. All right, imagine that you run a pharmacy store, and within the pharmacy store, the pharmacy will usually put drugs inside a container. Let's say we have a paracetamol, Panadol, whatever it is, like that. Now, if this container, like each of these containers, let's say they are white and there's no label on the container, how would the pharmacist himself know which container contains what? No, he won't know. So except he labels it, it's going to be confusing for him to manage his shop, and of course, it's going to be more difficult for anyone that doesn't own the shop come and help him out. Okay, so this is why that's why we play with variables. So variable is a way of assigning a memory locations, and then assigning value to that memory locations, declaring something within the memory location, so that if we need that thing, we can easily just call it we can declare a name and put something like Kenny in it. So each time we need, we can just call Kenny, right? So that is pretty much a simple explanation of a variable. It's pretty much like a container where we save contents or data. Okay, so how do you declare a variable in JavaScript? So the variable declaration can be, there are two, but irrespective of whether this thing, so there are two declaration. So I'm going to have it like this. So I have something like that. So let's say I have one. We have the explicit declaration, explicit variable declaration, and we have the implicit declaration. I'm going to break it down. Implicit declaration. All right, so now if you talk about the explicit declaration, whether it's explicit or implicit, they have similar way of declaring them. So let's say we are talking about this for now. So first thing you want to do is, when you're declaring a variable, you would have the you are going to mention the data type. That's what I'm declaring now is going to be of this data, right? So, and then you put in your own variable name. Variable name comes variable name, and then probably you have the value of the variable. value. This is not a valid code. It's just for us to understand what we are talking about. So first thing is you are going to have to say, okay, this variable that I'm declaring now is going to be a string. This variable I'm declaring now is an integer. This variable I'm declaring now is going to be a float. This variable I'm declaring now is a double. Stuff. So you're going to tell us the type of data that variable is. Then you're going to have to mention that variable name, and then you may assign the value to it immediately, or you can assign the value to it later on. Okay, so that is what explicit variable declaration is about. Okay, so here now, e.g., here we can have something like int age equals to 44, for instance. So in this case, int is the data type and the variable name is the age, and the value we assign is 44. We may also do stuff like this. Instead of assigning the value, we may say int age, like this. So what we've written is still correct. What we've done is we've declared it, but we've not assigned the value to it. So we have int age, right? And then later on we can assign age to be equals to 44 later on down the line. So this is still the same thing as what we wrote the first time. So, but what you see here is that we've not used it, right? So we have the data type to be integer, the variable name is age, and the value assigned is 44. But then there are rules. There are rules for your variable declaration. First, variables may not cannot be started with what's it called, with a number. You cannot start a variable name with a number. All right, so you cannot, it's not valid to say int for age. Stuff like this is not a valid name because I'm starting with a number. All right, so and then but of course you can start with an underscore and all of that. This is a valid name. Do not start it with a number, and do not put a space in between. Do not make it one word, like that. Then each language has its own way of declaring it. Maybe you use capital letter or small letter, like that. So, but if you use small letter or capital letter, it's not going to complain. But depending on which language you're using, each of them has their standard naming convention. Maybe you have to use a snake case, a camel case, and all of that. Or capitalized variables. So in C#, it's pretty much most of the times what you see you're using is going to be like a capitalized variable, like this, like capital S, when you are declaring your stuff like that. But if you use small letter, you have not done anything bad. It's just that you are not keeping to standard. Okay. So if you have something like this, int age, so let me say I'm using convention, so you say capital letter, but you may see me using a small letter too, so it's not this thing. But just know that the standard in C# is capitalized like that. So you can have stuff like this, int and age, and then you have stuff like that, and this is also correct, like this, but you cannot start it with a number, right? So this is example of an explicit declaration. You may also have stuff like this. Let's say you have a string, and the string name, say name equals to Kenny. Stuff like this. This is also a valid explicit variable declaration. Here is a type, data type, and then here is the variable name, and then here is the value. All right, so this is explicit declaration. This is an explicit declaration. You may have stuff like double, and then you have double equals to 5.5. You declare a variable, so but you didn't put the double, so double length, let's say you say length equals to something like that. Okay, so what you have done here is that you have declared a variable, and then the data type is the double, and then length is the variable name, and then this is the value. Okay, so you note that when we declare stuff like a int and double, they are not quoted, right? And then this is a string, while these ones are. So each of them you can go ahead and log them to console. you can go ahead and log them to console. You can say my age is age, and then you're going to see what comes out of the console. Or you can also log whatever it is that you have here and log them to the console. Okay, so that is the explicit declaration. So now moving on to the implicit declaration. If you say you have, okay, before that you may also declare a variable like this. Let's say you have int let's say number. Now for instance, you are saying it's num1 comma num2 num3, like that, and so on and so forth, like this. So what you have done here is that all of them, you are saying that num1 is an integer. So instead of having to write it on separate lines like int num1, int num2, int num3, you may declare all of them on the same straight line ahead and separating each of them by a comma, and then you can then assign value later on, or you can even assign value as like that. So num1 is equals to 15, and then num2 equals to 20, and then num3 equals to, maybe num3 doesn't have a value, nothing false, but if you have the value now, equals to 25. So what I'm trying to stress here is that it's valid that you have a variable declared like this. It's also valid that you have multiple statements, multiple variables declared on the same straight line. So this is still valid. Okay, so we have it like that. Now this is explicit declaration. Explicitly, we are mentioning the data type explicitly. From here, without having to run it, without having to go to runtime, I can see that this age is of type int. I can see that this name is of type string. I can see that this length is of type double, right? But now when we do an implicit declaration, which is the second one now, an implicit declaration is the declaration with a var keyword. So if you declare with a var keyword like this, you can declare, say, variable, and let's say you say wage or salary equals to 5,000, for instance. Okay, now here this var is a var keyword which can be used for anything. It doesn't have to be for string or for integer like that. Look at this one here. If you come here and you declare something, let's say you say int, let me comment this out first. If you say int wage equals to and then you put a string 5,000, look at what you get. So look at what you get. You get a red. A red is an error, because this represents a text sequence of UTF-816, and then you are assigning it to be an integer. It means that this does not match this, right? So you have to, there's no mal assignment here. So you have to declare this as a string. Or better still, if you do this, you can see that the error has appeared. Or better still, correct this to be you remove the string and then make it an int like this. This will still be valid. Okay, so but then if you're using a var keyword, then it's possible that you can just do any assignment. Okay, so now let me do this away. Now coming back to the implicit conversion now. So if I use a var keyword, I can say var wage equals to 5,000. So it means that at runtime this is going to be executed as an integer. This wage will be executed like that, but still I may change this to string, and this will still be valid. All right, this will still be valid. I've just changed this to string and it's still valid. Okay, so and then I can change it to integer, it's still valid. So if you use an implicit declaration, the at runtime, the compiler is going to find a way to interpret it based on the assigned value. So in this case, the wage is going to be interpreted as an int, But then if you use this, it will be interpreted as a string. If you use this, the wage will be interpreted as a string. It's going to be interpreted based on the assigned value. Based on the assigned value. All right? So that is what a var keyword. So var keyword give you some sort of freedom to just do any assignment. Pretty much it works pretty much like it works on in other languages as well, like JavaScript and all of that. But it also gives room for some sort of unnecessary mistakes, right? So, but of course, if you handle it carefully, it just give you some breathing space to do some stuff. Okay, so this is an example. This is just a way of doing your implicit declaration and your explicit declaration. Okay, so catch me in the next session. We are going to talk when we are going to be talking about type conversion. How do we convert from integer to another type? How do we convert from one data type to the other? Because we're going to be needing that as we move along. Catch you